All right, I'm gonna call to order the special meeting of the Superior Town Council for April 7th, 2025. First item is our roll call.
Mayor Lasis,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Serbu, council members Craycraft.
Here.
Miller.
Yes.
Shaw.
Here.
Kalish. Foster. Yes, here.
All right, up next is our item for executive session to hold a conference with the town's attorney and special counsel to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-4024B regarding Rocky Metropolitan Airport and related aviation matters. We have a motion to enter executive session. Got a motion from Councilmember Foster, second from Councilmember Craycraft. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, we are entering into executive session.
Right, I'm gonna call to order the Town Superior Town Council Work Session for April 7th, 2025. Our first item for our work session discussion is the in-depth presentation and discussion of the town budget. Jeff Stone.
Thanks, Mayor, can I just mention, the plan was to adjourn at 10, we can go longer if the council would like, of course, but Jeff's presentation would take about an hour-ish.
I can go quicker, but if you guys have questions.
So we might
I will not
get
say a
to
word.
Everything.
Glad you heard the in-person message.
Can I just start and say thank you so much for the one pager synopsis on the 2025 revenue and expenditures? Super helpful. And we should do this in all of the budgets on an annual basis. I think it'd be really great to see what this looks like. 2025 versus 2026 or just 27. I think very helpful. So,
All right, thank you. We'll just start with budget 101. So. The town has 14 funds and 17 budgeted funds. And a fund is used to segregate resources and expenditures. We use 5 different types of funds. The first one and the main one that a lot of the operations are out of is the general fund. We have 2 capital project funds, and we'll go into more detail on all these. There's 7 special revenue funds. These are either a specific tax or other purpose on where the revenue comes from. There's 3 enterprise funds that have 6 budgets. These are the water, sewer, and storm fund. They are really run as a business themselves. And then 1 debt service fund for open space that we will then add a second one for the approved CIP fund here in 2025. So the first fund we'll talk about is the general fund. In 2025, revenue is about 23.5 million. Of that, 19.4 come from taxes. The majority of those, come from sales tax, and then property tax is the next one. Next biggest. License and permits is about 1.3 million. That is from building permits and plan and review fees. Of that 1.5 that we've got budgeted for those revenues, 53% of that is the expense that goes to Safe Built for the review of those permits. Next set of revenues, charges for services. The biggest of that is the admin fee, and that is what the other funds pay back to the general fund for staff's portion of time. So some of Matt's time, some of my time, some of the people that are involved with the different funds, and you'll see those in the other funds of they're paying back the general fund. Next one, recreation fees for participation, about 200,000. Court fines, we have about 150,000 a year, and then miscellaneous revenue. Biggest one of those in 2025 is interest income, and then reimbursement from Boulder County.
So hypothetically speaking, when we do get FEMA reimbursements for the Marshall fires, that revenue would show up in these areas.
That will depend. No, not a lot of it would go in the general fund because it's all depending on what fund ended up paying for it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
So here's just a graph breaking down the revenues of the 23 million by percentage. And then again, a breakdown of the percentages from the general fund taxes that we receive. And as you can see, sales and use tax is the biggest piece of that. General fund expenses, kind of broke these down by department. Again, 24.7 million. Legislative, 154,000. Judicial, 150 again. Employee, the judge are the two biggest ones. Clerk department, that's kind of budgeted with a, person and some more is the biggest cost. Admin department, employee cost, Eco Devo program and sustainability are the three biggest. And then finance department, you can see the breakdown there. And then the communication department, again, as you can see, employee cost, and just to kind of go back to employee cost, personnel cost, based on that breakdown of the one page we were talking about is about 8.2 million, or about 31.5% of the general fund expenses in total.
Do you know offhand for the website and printing, is the majority of that is printing? Is that what that number?
As well as the upkeep of the website,
Okay,
the kind of the contract with the,
I have no idea what something like
Yeah.
that costs, but,
Is the ADA costs included in that?
I believe some of it's in there.
So we have ADA requirements we have to meet that we're starting to do. That's part of that cost too.
Good point.
I think, just like one of the reasons why, like, I so appreciate this one pager though, is like, we've always looked at our budget, in this way, and like all the different departments, and we've got like employee costs and their share. But like, this is the first time that I think I've ever seen like, $8.175 million on personnel.
Yeah.
Like, and it's really hard to just kind of like wrap your head around what our total costs are when we're looking at it on a compartmentalized basis across different departments. So it's, helpful to see all of this, but super helpful to see it in a condensed format.
great.
Continuing on, legal expenses. Next big one, public safety. Of course, that's our contract with Boulder County, so that is our contract with them. Planning and building inspection, again, some employee costs, but here's also where the 53% of that revenue that we just talked about is sitting in inspection services. Parks, rec, and open space, breakdown there. Biggest one there, of course, employee costs, but then you have community programs, building maintenance, park maintenance, and then yard waste are kind of the ones that, make up a big chunk. Public works, same thing. The biggest one there is, other than personnel, is, snow removal. And then non-departmental, this is kind of, I won't call it a catch-all, but this is where everything else goes, being the debt payments for the community center, the reimbursement to downtown Superior, Marshall Fire rebates here, office lease, insurance, and then the big one, the transfer out of the general fund to the CIP fund. And then there's our share of the library to Louisville. So there's just the graph broken down by percentages for that 24.6. So that's the general fund. Next, we have two capital project funds. Well, we will have two capital project funds. One is the set aside 0.3. It's been in place for a while now, for capital improvement program. And then the new one being the 0.315, that was approved, that went into effect this year, that will start. We'll use that revenue to pay off the bonds when we do the bonds here in the next couple of months.
So is there do we have a voter approved 0.3 for capital improvement?
We do.
And that's no sunset?
No, sunset.
When was that passed?
Early 2000s.
Let's see.
Like after open space?
Before open space. Interesting. So the breakdown of the first one. Revenue 7.6 million. 1.6 in taxes, again, the same type of breakdown. Grant revenues, we've got estimated at 2 million. Big portion of that is the GOCO grant. 660,000. And then the Rock Creek PED. Project is a $1 million grant. The Sagamore FEMA money is 133, and then DOLA comp plan grant is $150,000 this year. So that's a big chunk of that grant revenue. Impact fees for new houses that go in is for schools and parks. And then the transfer from the Marshall Fire Recovery to help with those projects is from that 0.16. And then here's where the transfer from the general fund comes back into the capital improvement program. That's the revenue side on capital improvement. And then expenses, 7.3 million, 4.7 for public works. You know, the biggest portion of those are the streets. And then the ops building, parks, same thing. Playground improvements, train enhancements, other than the ops building. Admin, the two biggest in there this year are the finish up in the civic space and then that comp plan. The comp plan's 225, as we talked, we've got 150,000 in grant revenue. We estimated we spent about 75,000 last year, so it's a $300 project between comp plan and the traffic plan, half of that being reimbursed through a grant. Then the new program on the capital side for the projects will be this year from the bond proceeds. Yeah, we'll go over this next week, somewhere between 14 and 18 million dollars. Recommended to go to 18. And then expenses will be whatever projects, you know, we've got. You know, whatever the board decides, we'll spend those, move those projects into here to spend that, those bond proceeds. So the next set of funds are special revenue funds. These have a specific source of revenue. So Conservation Trust Fund. And I'll go into these a little bit more detail. So individually, so I'll go through these quickly. CTF is from lottery money based on population. The open space is the 0.3. Landscape fee is the monthly charges. Same with trash and recycling. That's based on just a straight pass through. The Marshall Fire Recovery is the 0.16 sales and use tax that we then transfer to the CIP fund. Urban Renewal Fund is the TIF property taxes that then get reimbursed to the Metro District developer and the other entities that have raised their mill levy, including the town. And then the Metro, the Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District, which has used to have a sales tax, is now just property tax generated revenues. So the first one of those is the Conservation Trust Fund. This is lottery money from the state. And it's based on population, depending on how much money the lottery brings in each year. This year, it's budgeted over the revenues because we have fund balance to use. So we were going to $250,000 in pool repair and $80,000 in train enhancements. Those may change with the ballot measures. The thing about CTF, these expenses from the specific lottery funds can only be used on parks and rec expenses. Open Space Fund, again, this is the 0.3 sales tax. This again is the capital side. So we set aside the first, 600,000 or a little bit more that we need to pay off the debt. And then once that is in the debt service fund, then the Open Space Fund gets to where we will, use this money to buy land or use it to do upkeep and master plan implementation. So revenues again are the same. Expenses, we have one employee. And then this year, big open space maintenance. of upkeep of the maintenance. We have $50,000 for master plan implementation and then $20,000 for open space coordination.
Jeff, quick question on the employee costs. Is that just their annual salaries at their fully loaded rate?
That's fully loaded. Yeah. So yeah, when that $8 million we're talking about, that's fully loaded for salaries.
Great, thank you.
Good question. Next one, landscape fee fund. This comes directly from the monthly landscape fee, with the 3 different rates based on the type of house. And then we have the expenses of, landscape and landscape water, the biggest. You'll see the admin fee here. This is the amount that the landscape fee pays the general fund for town staff's time. Trash and recycling fund is just a straight pass through. So whatever we get billed, and now as we go to the pay as you throw, whatever the household decides on for their trash will be what we get billed, and then we will bill them for their service they choose.
And at some point, we can assess, a management fee.
Yeah.
Like our neighbors have been doing.
Next special revenue is the Marshall Fire Recovery Fund. This is a 0.16 sales tax that expires in 2032. This used to be the interchange district sales tax that was then repurposed as it was getting ready to expire. And so we've repurposed that to use to help recover from the Marshall Fire. So that money comes in from sales and use tax, and then that money's transferred to CIP fund, as we talked earlier. Next one is the urban renewal area. This is a property tax TIF, tax increment financing. So all the revenue, all the property tax that's generated from across the way in downtown Superior, those 80 acres is collected and then sent to us, that then's sent on to the developer based on a cost sharing agreement with the developer. They get a big share of it. The metro districts get some for their operations and debt. And then some of that is back to Boulder County, the school district at times. And now this year, the town, for back in 2003, when this was set. No, 13, sorry, not 3. Whatever mill levies everybody had set at that time is what they get the increment off of. If they raise their mills, then that goes back to them. So we set up an application, and then that's what we send to the trustee on a monthly basis.
And then, also a portion of this, if an entity like Mountain View Fire has a vote to raise their mill levy, whatever that increases, Mountain View gets to keep. And that goes same for the town or the school district as well, so. That revenue flows back to those entities.
And even before that, we had to set aside, didn't put that on here for the fire districts.
And this urban renewal authority also extends to the marketplace in original town. We used this fund to pay for the infrastructure for the Superior Marketplace, but that was a sales tax base to that time. It's been paid off.
Yeah, it's been. McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District. This is kind of the area around the interchange, including the marketplace, and then also includes the Aweta property up the hill. Property taxes, you can see we do get some highway signal maintenance fee from CDOT to help maintain the signals in that area. Then we've got grant revenue, and this is possibly for the CDOT grant for the Marshall and McCaslin intersection improvements. Biggest expenses here are the Marshall and McCaslin improvements. The Sycamore 76th Street mill and overlay. And then we have landscaping and water in those areas, as well as Founders Park. Their share of the admin fee to the general fund, and then transportation costs, kind of including everything being street and streetlight maintenance, as well as snow removal and street sweeping. Then we have our three enterprise funds. These are water, sewer, and storm. There are three enterprise funds, but as the council, you approved two budgets for each of them, one being in operations and one being in capital. It gets rolled up, but it's just easier to see the difference between operation and capital. It's been set up that way because operations are to, for the operations, and then capital is used for projects. And we've used system development fees as well as some operational pieces, operational revenues for those in the past. As we get closer to build out, then the operation revenue will have to cover both of those once the system development fees dry up. So water operations, $3.9 million in revenue. 2.9 of that comes from monthly, service charges and the amount of water everybody uses. Irrigation charges during the summer, about 750,000. We get some solar panel renewable energy credit revenue, and then interest income. Expense side, and again, this is not really a mismatch, but I said 3.9 million in revenue. We've got 9.1 in expenses. We're making a big balloon payment in debt this year that'll pay off that debt. So that's why it's kind of, and we've got that money in the bank. So that's what the difference is. Water supplies, $1.1 million. This is part of the expenses that we paid in Northern for our share of their water. Windy Gap is a big one, 325,000. And then our Colorado Bend Thompson assessments, 125,000. And then our pipeline and our pump station to get the water to town is another big chunk of $557,000. Water treatment plant, 565,000, biggest one there being the plant operator. And then the chemicals that go into the water before it's servicing the town, and then repair and maintenance, and then solids hauling is taking the leftovers of what comes out of the water to make it safe to drink. Water storage and distribution, biggest one of those are repair and maintenance for water lines with aging system, and then more importantly, our shifting soils. We end up with water breaks, and that's a big chunk. We also have new and replacement water meters every year, electricity cost for the system. And then non-departmental, this is where I was talking about. We've got a debt payment of 6.25 million to pay off that 2015 debt. So that'll go away. Now it goes away, but it also gets, our Windy Gap Chimney Hollow payment will, kind of come in here as well. There's the
So
admin
the
fee.
savings from the 6.25, once this bond is paid off, that'll just go towards paying off. the loan.
We'll have a new debt payment for that. Right.
And that when you gap payment goes out for like infinity, right?
Yeah, like 2056.
That's like $30 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that project is scheduled to be completed May, June.
Yeah, it's
And
coming
then
up.
do testing, and then they're hoping to start filling it later this year. It takes, I think, 2 years. to
They're
fill it.
hoping 2 to 3. It all depends on what the snowfall is and what they can fill it up with. So, and that's what we're working with Northern on now to try to figure out what the operating costs are going to be and what the pumping costs are going to be to get that water over here. So that's kind of what we're working on to make sure we've got everything in next year's budget.
And actually, just along those lines, Brand was able to organize a trip out to see it. So I think if you haven't been out there,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
And they're setting up new tours of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an impressive sight when you see it.
By the Europeans.
Then the capital side of water, $7.3 million in revenue. Big portion of that is system development fees, 2.5 million. Next one is grant revenue, 4.1. I don't remember. So it's the smart meters, and then we've got $3 million. And I don't remember what that is. So I will get that to you. And then we have water leases of about 20K. That this is just extra water that we have that we are not using, that we can sell to other people at the end of the year. Otherwise we lose it. So we keep as much as we can for carryover the following year. And then we try to sell whatever we don't use.
Sorry, do we sell or lease?
Lease, sorry. Okay. Yeah, it's
Making
leased.
sure
It's just leased for the year.
Okay.
Is there ever a problem? Like, does it all go? Whatever you allocate to lease, does it all get leased?
No,
Oh, okay.
and if we have a higher water year here where people are using more water, we won't have water to lease.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And are these water rights that we can lease 3 and 10 years, or do we have ability to lease it any year that we?
Any year we want, because it's a pool with all the northern participants.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Water capital expenses for 2025, $6.5 million. The Wendy Gap loan and allotment contract of 1.46. The smart meters, if we do get the grant this year, 2.25 million. Parks and Public Works op building, that shouldn't say 1.25K, that should be an M. The McCaslin new transmission water main, upsizing that is our portion of 250K. Building a solids handling facility, the design of that is 230. Water pump station upgrades of 300,000, and then finishing up the clarificator rebuild and replacement are the big projects in the water fund.
Jeff, can I make a quick comment just to panic the council a little bit, like how I felt when I first saw this? So a large portion of our revenues are coming from our system development fees, and we're largely built out, so that's eventually going to dry up, pun intended. So I pulled out the smart meters, and obviously some of these expenses are gonna change, but pulling out the smart meters, our revenue, if we didn't have the system development fees, would be about 3.7 million, and our expenses would be about 4.25. So that's a problem. And then spoiler alert, we're looking at the same issue with wastewater on the capital side, so just kind of getting that on everyone's radar ahead of time so that we're not having to be as reactionary. Those system development fees are a large portion of these revenues, and we need to think through that so that when we're all built out, we have something, some sort of plan in place, and I don't know what that looks like, but some sort of plan in place to address that.
Yeah, that's a good point, and something we've been talking about, one of the reasons for the rate increases that were proposed to the council is for that. Continue to try to get grant revenues and other, and then for larger projects, we're gonna have to see about state funding through loans and stuff like that. Yeah.
And talking to other finance directors, this is probably one of the biggest issues we've got coming as a state, in the fact that as development starts to go away and then prices just keep going up for water. Water rates, when you talk to people, are cheap. Because we work with PVSD on their irrigation water, and I send them, hey, here's our rates and here's what we're thinking about the following year. And it is like, I got back and he's like, great, thanks for this. Even with 7.5, you're still the lowest in the area.
Our water rates are a third of what they are in Centennial and Parker. Yeah, but the problem is we could jack up the rates and people will use less water, which then puts us in a downward spiral because we still have to pay for the water.
Yes.
It's just-
And with the 7.5, we thought we had everything covered, but as the chimney hollow costs keep going up, and northern costs keep going up, all of a sudden, as we saw last year in the budget, we're not there at that, break even point that I'd like to be. So we do have some things to look at. We'll talk about that during the budget process, but appreciate you bringing it up, because it's definitely something Matt and Brennan and I have been talking about, and we've been talking about it for years of trying to figure out what's the best way forward.
Not to put you on the spot, and I'm not looking for an exact answer right now, but forecasting that out, is that like in 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years that we're gonna need to really start thinking about that?
Probably within the next 5 years.
And I would agree with that. I would rather do it earlier than later, just for the simple fact, as you talk about the compounding of, if we were gonna do a 5% rate increase and we go to 7.5, that's 2.5% more. And I know as ratepayers, you don't want to hear that, but I'd rather do a little bit more than what Broomfield and even where I live in Thornton, where all of a sudden it's like, no rate increase, we're gonna do 5, and then I've gotten 12, 12, and 12 the last 3 years. Broomfield last year went 30.
Yeah.
Want to do it, we'll do it.
So yes, we will have that conversation starting this year, but
And we already moved up, right? We were doing 5% increases and now we're doing 7.
Well, and for years,
Yeah.
the board actually subsidized water with the general fund
Yeah.
because they didn't want to raise the water rates. I mean, well, anyways, I'm gonna elaborate on that. We could have been charging a lot more for water a lot earlier.
Yeah, before, I think it was 2019, we were moving over $1 million of general fund sales tax to the water fund to help the operations. So yes.
All green lawns though.
Same with chloride.
Yeah. The wastewater sewer operations, 2.3 million. Again, this is directly from monthly charges with solar panel and then interest income being the revenue sources. Expenses, wastewater collections. The two biggest pieces being the wastewater treatment plant with the treatment plant operator. Chemicals and electricity, of course, to treat the waste and then repair and maintenance. Non-departmental, again, sewer's share of the debt payment that paid off in 2015. And then we did do a 2020 debt for the sewer fund for the headworks projects that's being completed this year. And so that is that debt payment. And then there's the admin fee for that portion that goes back to the general fund. And then on the capital side, again, it gets $1.9 million this year in system development fees. And then we are working to use the $3 million that we've had for the ARPA funds of the COVID funds that we are using to do system development fees here in 2025. Used a little bit in 2024. We're hoping to wrap it up in 2025.
On those debt funded projects, we get pretty favorable interest rates on those, didn't we?
Very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was one of the reasons to go ahead and debt.
Yes. I don't remember what the rate is, but it was definitely, I want to say it was 3.1 or 3.3. Expenses for the sewer fund. This is where I was talking about the biggest one we'll be using the ARPA money for is the irrigation basin improvements, adding more volume. $2.8 million. Equalization ponds, 500,000. And then the smaller ones of what we do to just keep the system up and running. Then the last enterprise fund is the stormwater fund. Again, monthly service charges, revenues, and then the expenses, admin fee, for the permit and keep it clean programs are the biggest ones. Storm drainage, repairs and maintenance. Street sweeping comes out of storm. And then non-departmental, again, their share of the 2015 debt, as well as the admin fee back to the general fund. And then on its capital side, about $240,000 in system development fees. And then the expenses being reservoir and pond maintenance and vehicle replacement this year.
Mile High Flood District maintains some of those ponds as well.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of our projects are collaboration with them. Then we do have the one debt service fund for the open space debt service. This year, we will add one for the capital improvement bond proceeds that we're to get. So that revenue, as I said, is about $665,000 in total, all coming from sales and use tax. The expenses for this year, $392,000 for the 2015 debt, and then the 2020 debt, $266,000. Once that, the 2020 debt is just interest only. And then once the 2015 debt goes off next year, then that will pick up the extra amount and we will start paying principal on that 2020 debt and pay that off through 2040. So again, debt service, we have other debt other than what is in that debt service fund that are inside other funds because they're not specifically what I would call debt. So the community center, both the acquisition and improvement are in the general fund. Those those are really through a lease. It's called a certificate of participation. So that's why it doesn't show up as debt and why it's in the non-departmental side of the general fund budget. And then because Superior Metropolitan District number 1 is an enterprise, that debt sits inside those funds themselves because they run as their own business activity. So you can see the debt we have there and when those will be paid off next year. And then the same thing, we added that 2020 debt in the wastewater fund. And that'll go through 2049. And then again, we'll add the new debt service for the CIP here, 2025.
Jeff, looking at the one page that you provided, and I agree with Mark, this is super helpful. Thank you for pulling this together. Our debt service is roughly 12% of our total expenditures. Is that pretty standard? Is that on the low end? Is that on the high end for municipality?
It's all over the board. For us, that's on the high end because again, 6.8 of that is a balloon payment. That payment in the past has been about 1.5 million.
Okay.
So that is a much bigger percentage in 2025 than it has been in the past and what it will be going forward.
But I thought I heard you say earlier that 6.25 is going to get repurposed for.
It is, but not the full 6.25.
Okay.
That payment
Alright.
goes down to that northern payment, which is about, depending on what they finalize this year with those, because it's really not, it's not our debt.
Right.
It's northern debt that all the participants.
Our share of.
Yeah, it's our share of the debt as well as other expenses, but that's, I want to say 2.2 next year.
Okay.
So.
That's like 1.6 this year, is that?
For that payment, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna increase our Northern Water,
But
Big
decrease our
Thompson
total-
debt, from 1.6 to 2.2, but the 6.8 goes
away.
Yeah.
And that's all in it's already been budgeted. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's not like we're gonna free up $6 million, unfortunately.
Be nice.
It would be.
We just spent it.
And then debt payments for 2025. Mike, this is what we talked about the first time and adding when these all get paid off. So SMD 1 will get paid off this year, the 2015 open space in 2026. Excuse me, community center in 2034, the 2020 open space in 2040. And then the SMD 1 just for sewer will be paid off in 2040 as well.
So this is not gonna be a surprise to anybody, given the fact that there's a 40% likelihood we're gonna head into a recession this year. Is there an opportunity to potentially refinance some of this? I mean, actually, I know that we've got some pretty compelling rates already on this stuff, but, well, I guess when we go to the markets with the, sales tax, actually might probably be a good time to be at the markets.
Yeah, depend on what happens.
Yeah.
Now, with the last tax cuts, it did change some of the ways we could refund. So usually you can only, like the debt that will be going here this year, will probably have a 10-year call on it.
Sure.
In the past, we were able to advance refund things. That's gone away. So that's been eliminated unless it gets added back. So we don't have that opportunity anymore. But that's a good question. So, and we'll continue to watch the markets
Yeah.
and who knows, the climate may change, but that's where we're at right now. And Paul did a great job when he was here of refinancing everything. And
Yeah, we locked in some great rates.
yeah, we've got good rates on all our debt. And then here's the graph that everybody loves of the debt. Continues to go down, unfortunately, not unfortunately. We're gonna have the opportunity to add on to this for projects this year. So it's gonna kind of go back up here in 2025, 2026, but that's the graph. What's that?
For good cause.
It is good cost. So that's all I had for budget 101. Any questions or anything?
And I think that this chart is always really helpful to look at. And, I think it just shows that like we've been doing a good job in terms of managing things in fiscally responsible way, and you know, the debt that we've taken on, you know, at times has still been kind of reasonable when you look at the total balance sheet, you know, like over time, compared to where we were in the mid 2000s. So, you know, even going to the bond markets, you know, this year for the CIP expenditures, we're still going to be, you know, only at the 2020 levels, right? So that was manageable, and that will still be manageable now.
Yeah, our debt load 20 years ago was pretty substantial.
So that's budget 101.
Well, I appreciate it very much, Jeff. And this, yeah, you want to go into,
So yeah, this is just kind of our first, you know, listening to the board on what they wanted to see as a one page. So this is kind of the roll up of the whole, you know, 2025 budget, based on kind of the big chunks of areas that we saw revenue come in as well as expenditures. So I didn't know if anybody had questions on this or anything they want to see changed, you know, as we move this forward. And this is just our first. Matt and I sat down and kind of picked the categories, and that's kind of what we.
no,
came up
I
with.
mean, I think that this is great. I mean, my only question is, you know, what additional specifics could we get from miscellaneous and other? You know, maybe that's impossible and it's just kind of too fragmented.
The two biggest, and I thought this might come up, so I did some digging today. And I think I will add one at least. A big one is grant revenue. So I think we can add that. The biggest piece of that miscellaneous comes from the system development fees we talked about earlier. And so that's a big piece of the revenue. So I thought I'd add a grants line if everybody's okay with that. I thought I'd leave the system development fees just a miscellaneous because that's going to start going back down, but I could pull those out as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, we obviously don't want to recreate the entire budget in this and put too much, right? Like, exactly. You want to have, you know, less is more. I think from my perspective, this is really good. And you know, what I'm really interested in seeing is like how this looks like when you look at it over time. You know, because, you know, if I think having a one pager where, you know, this town council or future town councils can look at it and be like, wow, you could really see that, you know, our, you know, personnel costs are increasing at whatever the rate is. And it's just, you know, approaching some sort of like unsustainable, you know, cliff, or like, wow, we really spent a lot for like these 2 years for capital projects, but now we've dropped off. Like, why is that? It's like, oh, we had bond proceeds, and, you know, like it tells a story of kind of like the overall health when you look at it over time. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this kind of gets, you know, adopted and used going forward.
Yeah, I think my only addition is a reserve line, because at least with the numbers you have for 2025, we're spending $5 million more than we bringing in revenue. And that's just coming out of reserve. So, you know, sort of looking at that reserve number oscillate over time.
So you're saying make these balance?
No, I mean, there could just be a bottom line number that shows how our reserve cash, you know, what it looks like.
Okay.
long term, you know, because any given year, the reserve number is going to go up or down. And I think that's okay. That's a board, council level decision in terms of spending out of the reserve or not.
No, that's in the budget, but you'd like to see that here?
Yeah, because I think to Mark's point, when you look at this over, you know, 5 or 10 years, you'll see some years we spend less than we brought in and we're building the reserve, and others, you know, especially post a fire, we spent out of the reserve on purpose. And I think that tells the story of the decision we made.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because that was the one thing that's like, ooh, our expenses are higher than our revenues. And so having that bottom line, I think, answers the question everybody would have of, well, how are you bridging the gap? So
Good.
having that there. And then I was actually going to bring it up that you already did, but having out of that miscellaneous, seeing what the grant funding was, because I would be interested, since outside of applying for grants, we don't have a whole lot of control over those. I'd be interested to know how much of our revenue is made up. But otherwise, I mean, amazing job boiling down pages and pages and pages of information down on this page. It's very impressive.
On the expenditure side, the only question I have, we heard at the last one, hey, pull out vehicles. As you can see, it's a small piece of capital projects. I was gonna roll that and just leave it as capital projects unless people want to see vehicles. So we'll combine those. Anything else you see on the expenditure side that you have questions on?
My only thought on rolling it into capital projects, when I hear the term capital projects, I'm thinking of physical construction of a bridge or a roadway. And general government is more vehicles in my mind. But I don't know how,
I'd actually like to see it stay separate. Like, this is one of those things that I think residents think that we spend a ton of money on these
Okay.
things and we don't. And if it's separate, then they can see like, oh.
we
that's-
haven't increased that line in 20 years.
Just considering that, like, that makes sense from a perspective of how you look at the funds, but from a resident, that's not how they're thinking about this. They're just looking at it to see a number of something specific that's relatable, vehicles for their household versus our entire town. And so I think keeping the numbers in there that way is helpful.
That's easy enough to do.
Specifically thinking of requests recently of selling. Just,
Yeah.
I would like to leave it for now.
Yep, you betcha.
Yeah, I think what, I'm fine with these and, if we tweak it a little bit, that's fine, but. Yeah, it's gonna really tell the story, just looking at it over time. Because, wow, like you spent a lot that
Trends
one
with a
year, it's
lot.
like, yeah, well, like. $6.8 million went towards debt service retiring, and like, that's 10% of the expenditures, like, that's a huge. Amount, right, so.
Yeah, trend lines tell everything, and the legal number was rounding error before.
I love too the capital project thing, because I think that we get a lot of complaints, especially as the winter season starts to fade and the whole, like, all the damage for, like, people get very grumpy about. Like, as if we're not doing those things. And so seeing that giant number for that is really good.
It would be interesting to know, like, how does this compare to like other similar communities, like,
It's not a
Like-
competition.
well, yeah, I know it's not a competition,
But we
right,
don't
but we are superior. But in like, we've talked like historically about how we contract for a lot of our services, and now there's a little bit of a trend of like bringing more in-house, and we're getting a little bigger, we've got, more facilities. How do we know that we're spending kind of like the right amount on personnel for a community of our size? And I'm assuming personnel includes, does that include contract labor? That does not?
That's all in cost for town staff,
So,
full-time and part-time.
all right,
well
so,
as
so where would our contract labor
Depends on what,
is?
What
It's in-
area?
It's in the department.
it's in the
All right, so like
departments.
public safeties or
Yep.
police and
Public Works is your plant operators and snow removal.
Vargas is in Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec, yep. Because that Parks and Rec number is big because it also includes landscaping. And that's all Parks and Rec and open space, so.
It's a high priority for
Mhm.
our residents though, so it's good to have it on the
Yeah.
number.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just thinking out loud here, like, trying to think about. Like actual costs for. The people that do the work. That are. The public safety aspect of it, like, okay, like we've got police and fire and that kind of like makes sense. Putting like the Vargas cost in Parks and Rec, while I understand that. It kind of like hides, it sounds like more like it's. That's, work to fix pools and
Mhm.
mow grass and. I guess it is, but. I'm just wondering if there's a way to kind of break out the contract labor aspect of it so we can kind of see it within the personnel, but maybe I'm just overthinking it.
Yeah, I think the risk is always, you start breaking that 5 million, all of a sudden it's 7 lines
Yeah.
underneath it. The question becomes, what's the threshold? Because like you said, some of these are really big numbers, like miscellaneous 16 million.
Yeah.
But there's 3 things that are 80% of it, maybe there's a second page to this with like more breakdown.
Maybe we should just ask, can it be like a fun poll where we're like, this is what we've got, what do you not see on here that you wanna see? Like, I don't know. Not something that costs money or stuff, man. Just
Yeah.
like a little fun social engagement from the town.
I think this is great, so. Maybe it iterates over time, but
Give it a year, let it sink
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really helpful to be able to just kind of like see it on one page.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah,
Thank you,
so
Matt.
thanks very much.
Before we move off finance, can I have two quick things?
Of course.
One, when we were in finance committee, Jim brought up what I thought was a brilliant idea when we talk about educating the community and, trying to boil things down and anybody who wants to see, obviously, the budget 101 can dig into it. And I think it's phenomenal. So thank you for putting that together. But Jen thought it would be really fun, and I agree, because so many people don't understand how much things cost, is to do like a one pager in our like Hello Superior or something where, we can educate, and then there can be almost like a game component, like how much do you think a stoplight is? And then here's, the options, and, top 3 get a gift card to a local business or something. But I think it would be beneficial to educate our residents on how much things actually cost, because I know when I joined the board and learned, I was like, gee, that's so much more than I thought it would be. So I thought that could be helpful. So I just want to reiterate her idea, because I think it would help educate the public.
Test that it makes them like the next first Friday.
To add on to that though, we could work with somebody. Who would that person be on the staff to do something like?
Well, we'd have to get communications team involved, and then probably Jeff, and then if it's public works type of operations, we get Brandon involved, and if it's parks operate, depending on what operations you're talking. If you're traffic lights, it'd be Brandon. If it's park maintenance or playgrounds, it'd be Leslie and her staff. So
Well, just to like lower the threshold for what we're asking from them, like when we talked about this email, Brandon asked for some specific prices of things, and so he's already given me that.
okay,
It's more of like creating the content for however this is gonna go out, and so would that just be Kevin?
yeah, and his
Okay.
staff.
And I'll keep you in the loop too,
Sure.
but.
Yeah.
In the Hello Superior for the summer, there's gonna be an article on all the grants that we've received. So just everything from like FEMA to GoCo grants, and just kind of like talking about like the good work that staff has done to.
Leverage money that isn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Other
yeah.
people's money, or money that we paid into,
Yeah.
that we rarely see.
Hmm.
But like all, additional communication and outreach to the community, to kind of explain what things cost. So it's good.
And then the only other thing I had, in case anybody missed it in the update, is Jeff has been with us now for 19 years
Yes.
this month, so that's amazing. that we can recognize him for his commitment to the community.
He's only 30.
We have aged a day.
In this role.
Yeah.
All right,
Good.
thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're on to our economic development strategies.
Go down the line. So we are in the process of filling our economic development manager position. Hopefully have somebody on by the early May, hopefully, maybe sooner. So we just did an update on some of the policies that we already had in place. I'll just go through quickly. So the purpose is just to provide incentives and assistance to businesses, new businesses and existing businesses. Here are some of the criteria we use when we talk to businesses about what they need and how we can help. Whether it's to retain a business or attract new ones. And if I'm going too fast, you let me know. These are the industries that staff's been targeting. A lot of entertainment, restaurant, retail, forest, recreation, sciences, primary employers, hotels. Are the ones we've been focusing on over the last 5 years. Criteria for the applicants: physical location in town, long-term lease, generating new sales tax, contribute to the town's property tax, and provide new jobs, high-paying jobs preferably. And that's support our community goals, diverse quality businesses that contribute. desirable amenities.
What do we consider as a long-term lease? Is it 5 years, 10 years?
5 to 10
I know, okay.
typically is what we're looking for. Most of the ones in downtown Superior are 10 years.
Okay.
And then having the applicant that can demonstrate the financial management capabilities to see the development through completion and sustain that business. And the people that are leasing the space to them want to see this as well, Carmel and Brixmore and those types. Ineligible would be nonprofits, home-based businesses, religious, residential living facilities, and any business that's previously received a grant from the town. Eligible expenses can include, this is not an entirely inclusive list, but some of the things, exterior, interior improvements, cost of permitting, relocation costs, signage, and marketing. These are the tiers we've been using. We've adjusted these slightly because Boulder Baked, which falls in tier 2 category, received a one-time $50,000 grant from the town. It was a one-time cash. So they were the first business to open on Main Street, which was one of the reasons for the grant. That was what they had requested. But tier 3 would be anything less than 1,000 square feet, under 5 jobs, up to a $25,000 grant, or sales tax rebates. Performance-based rebates is something that staff really recommends and encourage, because they're performing and they're getting that money back. So there's less risk to the town. And then tier 1 is anything, it's an anchor. It could be an anchor like Bigsby, or I consider them kind of an anchor on the north end of the project, or an inline retailer that you would see in Rock Creek Village or the marketplace, or any of our commercial centers. And it's going to have 10 or more jobs, and one-time grant of up to 75,000, or up to 10 years with the sales tax rebate plus others. This is just some of the application criteria we ask for from businesses when we're looking at an incentive or a grant to them. And then these are some of the things that are available to us to help with a new business. That's sales tax revenue, which is performance-based. Building permit fee rebates we've done, construction use tax rebates that are ours, use tax, and then lodging fees if it's a hotel type of business. And then, of course, these are the payments and things that are required for businesses. I'm going to roll back up to the tiers. So these are kind of the caps that staff has been using and recommends, but we have those case-by-case scenarios that for the larger type of incentives, like a Bigsby, $1 million incentive over 10 years, performance based on sales tax. That half of that is being paid by the city of Louisville. So when you have those type of unique businesses, we have the ability to come to council and say, it could be a hotel, it could be a restaurant like Bigsby. What we can come to you and say, this is the incentive that we've worked out with the user, and see if what your thoughts, if you're willing to approve it or not. But these tiers allow some protection to the town as far as expectation to new businesses that, this is typically what we use unless we want to work out a separate case-by-case deal with somebody.
Have we approached Louisville to see if they would be willing to kick in half for any sort of upfront payment since they're reaping the benefits of sales tax?
We have, we reached out over the last few weeks. With Jill leaving, we didn't get, we got some questions back, which we responded to, but their new city manager started this week. I meet with her on Wednesday, so I plan on talking to her about it on Wednesday to see what their appetite is. I sent another email to them today, just a reminder, and I CC'd her on the emails, and she's aware that it's something I want to talk to her about, but we haven't gotten any commitments.
Historically, they've been opposed to it. And the reason being is their existing statutory plan is 50% of their business opportunity plan, BOP, is 50% of the sales tax rate. And that's all they'll do. Like when we approached them for Bixby's, a third of the council was in support of going the full sales tax credit that we were we were offering. But what they didn't want to do is send a separate message to this business as opposed to the other businesses in Louisville. They just want a level, that's it, this is all we're doing, nothing more.
One size fits all.
That's the approach they had, at least the council conversation. I think everything is always open to a new council, and they have a new council. But at least the conversation then was, this is what we offer, and, sorry, Superior, if you're doing more.
So then that begs my other question. Does that open up a conversation about this perpetual no sunset? They get half the sales tax, but they don't necessarily have to kick in on the front end if we are. Cause I would love to have that conversation again.
Yeah, I would like to meet with the new city manager, just have initial discussions with her and just see what kind of response I get.
Yeah.
So I'm going to DC on
Yeah.
Wednesday, and
Yeah.
Chris Lay is gonna be there.
You're there not to talk to your neighbors, you're there to talk to the electeds in DC.
You get the.
Well,
you get
every
to, like, 10
AD is
minutes,
also
all the rest of the
there, so
time is a show.
Well, yeah,
It's a lot of walking time.
and there's, mealtime and,
Yeah.
might be sitting on a plane together. But if there's anything that we wanna, do you want me to kind of
Yeah.
raise the discussion about
Sales tax. sunset.
revisiting
Yeah.
the IGA and coming up with some sort of sunset?
Yes.
that'd
Okay,
be huge.
I will do that.
Be helpful.
And also on.
So we want to specifically ask for kind of reconsideration of the IJ to put in a sunset, and then separate and apart from that, their appetite towards kind of contributing cash in lieu of or in addition to the sales tax revenue share over time for incentives on a case by case basis.
Yeah, I think it's multifold. I mean, sorry, it's also because we've gone more than just a 50% credit on sales tax for Bixby. They wouldn't even step past that. So, minimum matchups, potentially additional grants, and by the way, sunset.
Yeah. Cause in my mind, if we're happy to put up more money up front.
Mhm.
And they're only gonna match on the sales tax, well, then there should be a sunset, and because you can't in perpetuity reap the benefits of us investing in businesses that are coming to our town.
That was a stupid deal we did though. So
Yeah.
I would have to say that if they want to renegotiate with us, they'd probably want a full downtown Main Street that's gonna be creating tax revenue. Versus you going residential and you're not gonna get anything out of it anyway. So I'd much rather just pay off whatever we can with them, which we should have done the first.
There's
place.
nothing to pay off.
yeah,
We
Yeah.
traded parcels of land, and one's open space now, so. I mean, that was
Yeah, which was a huge mistake.
probably.
Yeah, but it's
wasn't
the
at
deal.
time. Yeah, it was the deal that
Yeah.
got signed.
So they get 0.125%, is that what it is?
135.
0.135, and we get 0.1, so it's 0.27, right, total. And so they get 0.135, we get 0.135 of nothing, they get 0.135 of downtown.
And we get 0.135 of whatever the Prairie Dogs decide to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you can't build- then you can't build.
the
No,
state outside.
see, not
But,
that.
yeah.
Or they took it as part of the US 36.
Yeah, so it's useless.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's just a terrible deal all around.
right,
And I
yeah.
think you can very much broach the subject of, we're happy to invest more upfront. Are you willing to do that? No. Okay, well, then we need to have a discussion about a sunset, because that makes no sense.
Okay.
Matt, when you talked about the financial wherewithal of the businesses that are coming in, and obviously this wouldn't apply to new businesses because they won't have any financials behind them, but if we have like a relocation or, business that is having a location elsewhere and now wanting to move here, are we asking for financials, like 2 years of financials, year-end financials, last 2 years, P&L, AR, balance sheet, and then are we getting year to date? Like, personally, I feel like if we're not, we should be getting those just to see the financial health of the business.
Yeah, so if we issue a grant, we're getting verification that they spent the money first, because it's a matching grant. So they have to spend, Boulder Bay had to spend at least 50,000 in interior improvements or exterior, whatever, before the grant was given. And that came to the council actually, or the previous, the board at the time, for that, but yes, yeah.
And then if it's a new business, are we getting like a owner resume or something just to see what is their background and are they?
Yeah, I had a lot of information they have to give to Carmel or Brixmore, whoever, when they lease the spaces.
I really appreciated the Korean barbecue BB.Q presentation where they sort of outline their financials and their costs and the build out and all their projected revenues. Found that really insightful.
And it's more important for the cash grants than the performance based. Because there's less risk to the cash for a sales tax rate.
On these incentive tiers, what's the line between where staff has discretion versus when it has to come to the council?
Well, it's anything over 50,000, but if it's if it's a sales tax rebate, that would come to the council.
For any amount?
Well, and then what's in the budget right now is only like, I think, 50,000
Yeah.
total. So if, you know, staff gave 45,000 away without coming to the council, all subsequent grants for that year would have to come.
And
to the
these
city.
have gone up.
Yeah.
So we adjusted these were 10,
Yeah.
20 and 50. For the 3 tiers. So more of the grants were in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. That have been given out over the years, over the last few years.
And so I was looking at our website and you can't access this information from like the superiorbusiness.org.
Okay.
There's like a link for incentives, but it doesn't actually show you any specific numbers. It doesn't show you any of this stuff. So
Okay.
I guess the question is like, is that intentional or not? And like, how does this policy compare to our neighbors? Like, are we in the same ballpark as
Yeah, and
others are?
we are in the same ballpark. We have that information I can send to the council.
Yeah, I would just think that like if we have a published, public incentive policy, we should make it easy to find,
Yes.
I'm gonna, my gut says no, but
you know?
keep going. I don't know. I'd like it to be more of a conversation.
That was Jill's thought too. She really wanted to have a conversation first. I mean, and I've seen both sides of this. 'Cause
Like, yeah, I can go. But
'Cause
for
what-
some reason, I'm,
What one group said is that a lot of these large companies are looking at nationally, they're doing the desk side analysis and they want to see the numbers, but I don't think our target, if we're talking 1,500 square feet, we're not being targeted by large multinational company. These are small businesses.
Okay.
Because I actually kind of agree with you. I think a conversation is better because then there's so much more to be heard in that conversation around how easy it is to get business license here, everything else that you're not going to get because you're going to stumble on a Louisville page, see a bigger
Right.
number, and then realize that you're stuck in purgatory for permitting.
I guess my thought was that. I mean, we're talking about it tonight. This is public,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
I'm not-
so. We want to be as easy to do business with as possible, and, if. Somebody's gonna look at like, oh, this is what Broomfield's economic development website looks like, and this is Louisville's, and boom, 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 they're getting all this information, and then all of a sudden. Like Superior doesn't have like a published incentive package. Even though we have it, it's just not easy to find, and like, what's the purpose of having it? Like,
Mhm.
I guess we should be consistent with what our neighbors are doing. I mean, if everybody's not disclosing it in a very clear manner, then maybe we follow suit. But if they all are and we're not, then we're, I think, just harming ourselves.
But staying on the economic incentive theme, but changing topics with Sundance coming to Boulder, has there a larger regional conversation around economic development incentives and helping, whether it's through the chambers of commerce, trying to, attract businesses to be ready for that?
Mhm.
And maybe it's too soon because the announcement was fairly recently, but
you should be talking about it.
Yeah,
And hopefully the new broker for the Element site is,
I've already mentioned that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
aware.
I already mentioned. Yeah, they'll probably be coming forward to us with some form of request for an incentive. For a new hotel.
Feel free.
Yeah, I've been talking about it even before we got Sundance. My thinking or talking point was there's a good possibility of doing Sundance. Because what the whistle get them thinking about what the opportunities are going to be, and now that we do have it, yeah, that's definitely a talking point every time.
When we go back to the incentive slide, so my and I'm directionally okay with this, but you know, the conversation with Louisville is one that we have to have. The other conversations with Carmel CBRE, right? Because it can't be the town. And if you go back, you know, 2 mayors ago, Andrew Buckle was up here very emphatically telling the community, we're not going to spend any tax money on downtown, right? Period. Like downtown was all going to be self-sustaining and everything else. And we have spent like $1.5 million with Promenade and the 50,000 with Boulder Bakes. But you know, and because we gave them $1 gazillion in the TIF, and the TIF was not about building a whole bunch of homes. The TIF was about building an economic vibrant core. And if Carmel, Seabury are not ponying anything up here, we got to be really cautious about throwing more tax dollars after it. So that's my hesitation. I mean, I'm all for getting Main Street filled in, but you know, if they screwed up and built a very difficult, hard to rent space, it's not our job to solve that problem that they created. Right? I mean, they're the ones that chose to build workspace, work study, live work. Now they're struggling with it, and now they're looking at us to help bail them out, which is not our job.
We'll have, we did ask for information from Carmel about what their average, I guess, because they say it depends on the user of assistance with tenant finish.
Yeah.
And
But some of that's
To have
being
that
incurred
small.
because, yeah, and some of that's being incurred because they built it wrong, right?
Some,
You know, I mean, like I remember, you know, some of what Crack Bobas had to deal with the stuff that if this had been built by a proper contractor, they wouldn't be incurring those costs to begin with. You know, or even our own space, we're having to move space because they just, you know, they hung stuff poorly.
Right.
It,
HVAC for the barbecue, where they were saying it
Right.
was, just in First Fridays, they were saying it was gonna be like $100,000 more than what they even anticipated because of all the tariffs and the HVAC.
well, that's another
issues.
variable. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about, you know, their ability to buy stuff. I'm thinking about just Carmel CBREs, they gotta have a massive seat at the table. Cause they're gonna derive way more revenue than we are. We're gonna get 1.375 in tax revenue forever. Maybe it goes to 2.7, but they're gonna be getting rent and everything else. They're gonna be recovering their costs much quicker than we will. Right, I mean, for most businesses, for us to get back to 75,000, it's gonna take a long time, a lot of revenue. If you only have 1,500 square feet, that's a lot of revenue per square feet. It's a decade of waste.
And just keep in mind, our sales tax rate's gone up.
Yeah.
The 2.7 is just what it was the sales tax rate at the time.
With the split.
Agreement with Louisville. So anything above that, the town keeps that additional portion. So without sharing.
Yeah, but some of that's going to the capital fund, some of
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
going
open
other places,
space,
right?
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I just want us to be really cautious here, because it can't be, you know, our incentive strategy can't be the same for all of Superior, because economic return of the community is different.
I'd be interested in us sitting down with Carmel and maybe going through the incentives they're offering, or the issues where
Yeah.
things aren't built correctly, so now tenants are having to come and do that.
We'll be meeting with them next month, so we can start that conversation with them and then have a sit down. Maybe at the June, we'll see when they're hesitant to come to our public meetings, but maybe we can get them to come to the June work session.
Buy a few drinks.
Yeah.
But you bring up another point. I mean, in terms of any business right now, it's gonna be carnage in the next few months. Right? It's just, I mean, because right now China's good to say, hey, okay, we see that.
Raise you.
Yeah.
I was also do that building thing too. I mean, anybody wanting to build a home or a new developer, like Richmond or Remington wants to do something, it's a massive undertaking.
Yeah, but anybody who's trying to go with any sort of commercial development is gonna probably struggle with financing now
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I'm using that.
And Carmel too, I mean, like, the thing with Carmel, they're a residential developer, they weren't a commercial developer, so they're trying to learn on the fly also now. So, I mean, when Ranch Capital said, hey, take it.
Well, first they gave it to Morgan,
Yeah. So,
and Morgan bailed.
we're gonna work on it, me and Matt.
When you talk with them, because I know Jill was going on those site visits, which I think was a huge plus. With their leasing person, can we make sure that we're getting invited to those? I think it would behoove us to make sure we have like someone on board, somebody going on those to help sell the property.
Yeah, that was a conversation with Jill, but then she's no longer here now, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know that anytime she could, she was going on those.
Yeah.
Having gone on one. We need
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea was one of us, either you or I would go as well.
Yeah.
as a liaison, but, we've got to try to. I think the new person we bring on board will be amenable to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep that up.
Thank you.
And you would hope that. I mean, I don't know what their P and L looks like, but yeah, they typically wouldn't want to just have vacant space.
Occupied
in
space pays
perpetuity,
more.
Right, like they like to lease the space to somebody that's actually gonna pay some rent. You think,
You think, people that can do it.
or charging rents that people are willing to pay,
That too.
but I'm not an economist.
Mark, can we visit?
Plenty of
this
jobs in
again?
the White House for you.
So can we, I mean, I just wanted to make sure Matt knew. Can it be presented, but presented with a caveat? and
Yeah, for sure.
The conversation, because to be honest, there might be someone who's looking at 3,000 square feet and we sit around a table and there's incentive on multiple ways to sit with them. And again, that will come with relationships and the new economic development person, but I don't disagree. I'm all about transparency. I just want to make sure there's some flexibility in here for us to either go above and beyond because we are going to earn their business because they're going to want to be with us rather than our sister communities. But I also don't want us to be tied to this and something that we trigger and make sure we maintain these numbers or change them based on the current climate.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if this is on the website, there'd have to be an introductory paragraph
Yeah.
or something that would
Right.
explain.
And dated with, put on the website on this date.
Right.
Because if it's 8-10 months from now and who knows what the world is like, those numbers are either great or they're not. So I just want to make sure we don't get ourselves stuck.
Yeah, I mean, I think telegraphing that. We
We're open.
want to be open for business and flexible. Want to be a business friendly climate where people want to invest in our community. All those things, but at the same time, like. We're a small town, we've got limited budget, we can't do all the things for everybody. All right,
Thank you.
anything further on economic development strategies?
Yeah, it might be worth getting to dovetail back to Sundance, maybe at a future work session coming up soon. Talk through some ideas on how we can capitalize that and get ahead of it. 2027 will be here.
Right.
Okay.
I think you need to get Renee.
Yeah.
Who's in on it first, and she can be the one to tell us.
Okay. Nice.
That's how I would approach it. She's gonna be with Boulder Chamber. Paired up and then she'll come to us and report to us is how I would hope it happens.
We can do some movie screenings in the plaza.
Yeah.
Well, we've already done movies there. I'm not joking, I'm serious.
I like it.
I want signs on the highway that say,
Out-
open for business,
outdoor-
welcome
outdoor movie
Sundance
theater,
fans.
you know, like that.
January.
It's Colorado. It's nice. It's true. Yeah. All right,
Make a suggestion that maybe we move the town holiday lighting next, just so Leslie
Yeah.
can get
Sure.
out here.
Oh, yeah.
all right. D, discussion
I think she likes to stay.
of town holiday lighting.
Here it has a bright future.
Dun-dun-dun.
Wow.
One was gonna come up.
Sorry, was that too cheerful?
Too loud?
Actually, I think Neil brought this up. Do you wanna?
Yeah, no, and actually, I really appreciate the second page of this staff memo. It's I can't manage a budget because I want more lights. Number one, I do want us to stay within a budget this year, and number two, I don't know what our strategy is here, and we seem to have this continued legacy of adding lights to Rock Creek. And it's really truly the most leastly densely populated part of the community. Obviously, there's a legacy of Rock Creek having put up lights, and that's their legacy. But there's numbers of neighborhoods here that have no lights within, 5-block radius, whether it's Bell Flatirons, there are no lights whatsoever. There's Sagamore, there's the Ridge, there's Saddlebrook, blah, blah, blah. So, I want us to have a cohesive, what are we trying to do with the lights? And I think a lot of what we've been doing historically is, um, Rock Creek had some lights, we put lights on town facilities, and then we slowly added some lights onto the commercial areas. Rock Creek backed off, we kept some lights there, but we didn't go and sort of reassess what communities, what parts of the community deserve lights. And I don't know that this map tells me what we're trying to do with the lights, other than we've got some in our commercial cores, and I'm not sure I truly understand what
So
we want to do.
when the town was doing our lights, we did Town Hall, Grassville Park and Coal Creek.
Yep.
That was it.
Yep.
And then Rock Creek did their own thing.
Oh, I do.
Huh?
I like it.
And then we started a partnership with Rock Creek, and we took over management of the contract. And we kept the lighting locations that they had decided, from previous years. And slowly kind of added some, took some away where it made sense. This map is based on the council's discussion last time we talked about this, where was to focus on the main entryways into the town and commercial cores and town facilities. And so that's kind of how we got to this map.
No, and I get that, and as I'm rethinking that,
Mhm.
there's still a large number of lights in Rock Creek, and there's not a lot of lights in the other parts of the community,
Mhm.
right? Because yes, Rock Creek has more entry and exit points, but people come in and out of this town on the east side of Marshall, there's no lights there. So I don't know what the right answer is here. It just feels like to me, for a town our size, to have gone from spending 75K on lights to 100K, and seeing no contributions from Brixmore, from Ranch, from any of the HOAs, it just seems very asymmetric. I mean, don't get me wrong, I hate being perceived as a Scrooge, but it does feel like the lights. There's never gonna be enough lights, like everybody's gonna want more lights, period. But you look at Louisville, like downtown Louisville, it's all by the Downtown Business Association. Pearl Street in Boulder, it's all that Pearl Street Development Association, or forget the exact name, and that's been around since 2000 or 1999. We don't have that history, right? While Louisville's DBA has been around for a decade, and they do the lights. City of Louisville just does a town facility or city facilities. So I don't know where this goes. It just feels it's sort of unsustainable to me when no one else is ponying up because we're the ones spending it.
I think we should only be putting them where our businesses are. And none of the residential stuff. If Rock Creek wants lights, then the HOA should put lights up. If Sagamore wants lights, they could put lights up. If Original Town wants lights, they could put lights up. Downtown Superior gets a benefit because they're there, but that lighting is for the businesses in the downtown. Main Street.
And there's a
I-
town event down there at that time of
Yeah.
year, which I would argue is a great use of those lights.
Yeah.
Or the lights that are on, Colton and Rock Creek Parkway by Safeway, like those are businesses there. That makes sense. I have no idea what those lights are doing over there. I mean, I get it, there's an entrance there, but that is a totally residential entrance. And so I wouldn't want to see them put back up there. I don't care if people think I'm a Scrooge. We don't have money to cover all of this stuff. And we're going to have less as people restrict and sales tax revenue goes down because people aren't spending as much. So I'm very much for getting out of any of the residential lighting stuff and only doing our commercial, the stuff that's gonna be there to support bringing in people to shop and feel all those good things in the commercial areas. And if people want to feel that way in their communities, great, do that.
And there's nothing in any of our ordinances that would prohibit Sagamore or any neighborhood from banding together to put up holiday lights.
No.
Okay.
And have we talked to the DTS? I mean, as I look at the number of dots on here, the commercial dots are substantial in DTS, and I get it that there's only like 2.5 businesses right now. But Ranch.
I think each one of those red dots is trees.
Each one is like a block, so yes,
Okay.
it's,
Yeah.
and staff is recommending that we look at maybe cutting down on the number of trees we did, because we did like every. tree.
Yeah, every tree.
Maybe we do every other tree, and then, the civic space will be a new potential.
Because one of the things that you see in well-established commercial cores is sort of competitions among businesses for holiday displays, right? So they can do their own thing. We obviously need more businesses for this to work because, every third business just doesn't look the same. But it feels like there's more that they should be taking the lead on and we can assist.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but it seems like it's maybe
We don't have that critical mass.
three,
It's-
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a conversation, back to what, Carmel, that conversation around like, hey, we've been doing this, last 2 years, we've actually had a lot of lights in downtown. It'd be good if they wanted to contribute,
And Brixmor.
Bridgeport especially, but we know their answer. You guys are coming to Costco and Target anyways.
Not denominational.
They used to, Bridgeport used to put up lights. We can talk to them when we see them in May.
We lost a
What?
good number of the locations, in Brixmor, in the marketplace, just from the fire. So some of those electrical services were not restored. Not that they can't be, but they weren't. A lot of their signs that had electrical to
Yeah,
them,
that
they
makes
didn't
sense.
repair that electric.
Good to know.
So Brixmor didn't choose to repair the electrical?
Or else it's not done yet.
Yes.
So,
They got all the insurance money already.
Yeah.
yeah, we used to plug into a lot of their sign.
Yeah.
Electrical outlets.
Put that on the list too.
Well, no, that gets back to the conversation with Brixmor as well, right? I mean, they've wanted more signage. Well, place finding. Wayfinding. But they can't, give them electricity for it. So,
So is it the proposal of the council to get rid of the yellow,
Yes,
all of them?
yes, yeah.
And then stick to it when we get the inevitable.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah,
You guys hate Christmas.
just like money.
Yeah, we like the economic impact.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, Rock Creek, if the HOA wants to put lights up where the yellow ones are now.
Yep.
Or anywhere else.
Or anywhere else, have at it. But I agree. I think we should focus the town's investment in our commercial areas to attract business.
People are not gonna be happy, but let's.
Let
I
them
mean,
go ask the people in Sagamore about all their lights that they get.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what everybody's getting at. It's just. The residents at the end of the day, at least the residents that live in Rock Creek. They don't care if the HOA is doing it or if you're doing it, they just want the lights.
Yeah.
So
And there's a new.
if the HOA, I would love it if the HOA would step up and do it. I don't think that they will.
Yeah.
And so then we're just gonna have upset residents that we're gonna have to deal with.
I
I
mean,
think that they need to take that to the HOA then,
yeah,
and not to us. Like, we
So-
don't float them
yeah,
because the HOA
And
is
so,
doing.
and
We've
so,
been bailing them out.
yeah, and so, I think we've been kind of starting this conversation with the HOA, but we need to be very clear and just be like, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're not going to do. And like, we sent them that list of like, this is these proposed locations, if you want to contribute. This is how much they cost. I don't think they responded to that, right?
They did not.
So,
Not even,
It'd be great
a-
if they work with us.
there wasn't
to be
even like,
we want
acknowledgement,
them.
like, we've received your
I mean, we
email
can't
and.
Scale.
No, and they. When we met with them at the community center, they said they would take it up for consideration, but we never heard back from them.
Well, maybe we can check in.
so I would say like, let's, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to like jam them at the last minute.
Yeah, I
where
mean, that's
we're
why
all of a
it's
sudden-
April.
Yeah, I know.
They'll know
And-
in October. When
but-
they go up.
So,
Or don't.
we just need to be clear and telegraph what it is that we're going to do and what we're not gonna do. And then I think also one of the objections that I've heard from the HOA is they don't own the land for the trees upon which these lights would go. So we would just need to be clear that we would be granting them the license and permission to put it up there, and that won't be an impediment to them doing it. They just need to pay for it and contract for it.
Well, I mean, we can leverage our contract. if they're-
Exactly.
Which is what we
What
said
we've done.
previously.
But they've just decided not to pay
Yeah,
us
but
anymore for doing that.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think that that's what we did in the last communication with that. Yeah. It was like, hey, we're not planning on doing these intersections if you want them lit up. You know,
This is what it's
this is
gonna
what it's
cost.
gonna
Yeah,
cost,
yeah.
let us know.
I think
But-
that has to be the consistent response to residents that complain about it too. Is that this is what we've decided, this is what we've offered the HOA, they haven't responded, if that's the case, and this is how you contact them.
Yeah.
Like,
To be fair, if the HOA uses the reasoning that they don't own the land, so they can't be putting lights on it, then I don't understand their argument of we don't own the fences, but they want us to be doing them.
That's too spiritual, too not.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a different conversation.
they disagree with that interpretation too, so.
Well, that one's got an IGA behind it, so this one was sort of,
There's no way to like wean off of this, people are not going to like it.
well, we've
We
been,
just have to be consistent in the response of what we've decided and why.
I think we have been, like, there were more intersections with lights and they've gone down, and I think if we go to 0 in Rock Creek, then that's kind of where we're at. Because we used to have lights at, I forgot the intersection, there's
Christensen?
Christensen. yeah,
Christensen.
And then in Indiana,
Also about the-
Indiana is not shown here.
By the North Pole.
and at the fire station.
We can't get the emails of residents calling us at whatever the names are and bad stewards of the budget and then do stuff like this. That doesn't go together. Like, it's just not consistent. Like, so I understand there's gonna be hurt feelings about the joy of Christmas not being lit up in the Rock Creek area, but we don't have to fix that for them.
Yeah, I guess the rebuttal to that is, I don't think I've ever seen an email saying that we're spending too much on lights. I've seen the board talk about it and say like, we think we're spending too much, but the public, that's not the stuff that they're complaining about. They're complaining about all the other stuff, but not the amount this is an expenditure where they're gonna say like, actually,
They're
we
cool
like
with
this.
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's my point is, what is the like reason that the town government should be putting lights up in a private resident area? Like, why? What is the, like, what is the justification for that? And why, if one resident area, then all?
Yeah.
And if we can't do all, then we shouldn't be doing any.
And if we're taking some light, Coal Creek's still gonna have lighting in Old Town.
Yeah.
That's what we go to, okay,
Yeah.
no, that's fair.
All the yellow.
Leslie, one of your emails had said something about buying the lights, really, like, do we reuse the lights or is it just, are they scrapped every year?
No, they have an inventory
Okay.
pretty much put aside for us based on history. Obviously, there's replacement
Yeah,
along
right.
the way and they have turned over almost completely to LED now, so over the last few years. But they do like us to finalize the contract as early as possible, so if we add anything or we want something new or different, it does take them a little bit of time to source.
So how much do we think we're expecting to spend on this proposal without the yellow lights?
I put trees there. Castle and Rock Creek.
Yeah, those ones are like 17,000.
15,000 or
Yeah.
something astronomical.
Those are crazy.
Yeah. 17,
17.
yeah.
That's-
I did a little calculation if I can find
That's
it.
34,000.
Yeah, it's kind of sad when they were gone last year, but not that sad.
Not $34,000. So
I mean, I think we can drop it down to, and these are based on prices from 2024, so they're gonna probably be at least 3% higher, but,
They come from China.
yeah,
Something like that.
hopefully we don't have to.
That's kind of what I was
Source
wondering,
any.
what we buying versus the old stuff,
I'm thinking about 70 to 75,
25% reduction.
and it might be a little bit more than that when we get down to it, especially if we decrease, Main Street a little bit and do every other tree. And we can throw some of that savings into civic space,
Yeah.
doing something there.
We should definitely tell people sooner. Like, communicate this multiple times. of the changes as like the fall season starts to arrive. So that it's not like November and somebody.
I wrote a blog about it like a couple weeks ago, but
Maybe
just
you
kind of
could
like
do a video and then bridge.
the picture of my blog was the Grinch.
And it might be helpful to mention how much we're gonna be saving not doing it. Like, not everybody neighborhood gets it, and by the way, it's saving this much by not doing that. Like, it's not a small. amount.
I think any of us could write, our position on it, so.
All right, well, so I think the direction is let's eliminate the yellow. Notwithstanding my objections to the spirit of Christmas. Sorry, we're being saved. And let's communicate this to the HOA.
Yeah.
And let them know that. I think we should send a letter that just says like, we're gonna go to contract with our provider in probably September.
Earlier if we can.
August, July.
Christmas in July.
In the event that they want to participate in it and leverage our contract. Let us know what line items they want to add.
And the same reach out to Brixmore and Carmel.
Refresh my memory, because I might be remembering the timing wrong, but I remember in my mind when the HOA used to do all the lights and then they backed off of that. Wasn't that the same year that the residents wanted them to litigate against the airport? And so I thought I remembered as a resident having holiday lights taken away because of cost of litigation. Am I misremembering that?
I feel like I've heard that before too, but I don't.
No,
I
I
was
mean,
It was the
It's-
exact same year, but maybe I'm.
it was a coincidence, like they just decided, I think to stop funding it.
Okay.
Maybe they said the town is just gonna do it anyways.
I thought I remember them.
They dropped off in 2020 and then 2021. They phased out over 2 years.
Yeah.
And they took it down from 50 to 25 and then from 25 to 0. And like that was right when then the fire hit. And then the town said, well,
We don't wanna.
we don't want to just like deprive the community of like any hope. So like we funded it and yeah, now we're a couple years removed, so. Well, we're just ready to do something with it, so.
Yeah, they actually didn't fund it in 2019, and then they came back in 2020 and 2021 for 25K each.
Mhm.
But in 2019, they didn't fund it.
And when was their litigation for those easements? What year was that?
20, I think. Actually, I probably have it here.
All right, so let's put together communication with the HOA, let them know like this is what the decision is gonna be and
2021.
remind them that if they
send it.
want to have lights in Rock Creek, they're gonna have to pay for it. And they can either do it themselves, or they could do it through us if they contribute and specify.
Okay.
But like, obviously, we need to have that answer by a date certain.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leslie.
all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. All right, we are on to item C, which is discussion of conducting an employee survey.
Jen?
So I wanted this to be added because we talked about this a long time ago, I think. Well, that's relative, I guess. I've only been here for a couple of years, but the discussion was about the staff and whether they had a place that they could truly be anonymous and give feedback on whatever their experiences are and or if they're having issues. And so this is a really big, like, I don't have a necessarily like an end goal of, well, the end goal is to ensure that staff has a way to give feedback that doesn't run necessarily through you or in a way that is, I know the staff's not that big, so it's hard, I think, for people to give feedback without it being easy to be like, well, I'm pretty sure who said that, or maybe a department only has 2 people, and so I don't know what efforts have been made to ensure that that feedback can be given in a way where they feel safe to do it, and they don't have any concerns about reprisal or, and then it git's addressed, that if, for example, I'm not aware of any of this, but I'm just using it, I just want to clarify, I'm just using this as an example, but if there was an issue with you, who do they talk to? Who do they message through? How does that work? Or if there's an issue with their department head, like, I guess, suppose that would come through you, but what if there isn't a relationship or a feel of safety? It's coming through you. Typically in worlds that I work in, there are chains, but there's also options for, like, I'm not going through the people that I'm working closely with because I don't feel safe to do that, or I want to communicate something that I know won't be received or amplified. It's gonna, stop. So, yeah, that's why I wanted on here to discuss. I wrote this in an email recently, but we have lost some staff over the last couple of years. And then top positions. And I feel like for a town so small, that feels like a lot. So I feel like there is room for improvement on them being able to advocate for themselves in whatever capacity that looks like. And if anybody else has opinions about that or recommendations or tools or something, but I would like to care for them better. And I don't know what that looks like exactly. And it might not even be the lane that I'm speaking about, but something's missing. I don't know what it is.
Staff I spoke to, Jen, would love a third party to conduct a survey completely independent, that is anonymous, completely anonymous. That way they can feel like their feedback is being taken, as well as, they can be not critical, but they can be open about their experiences as members working here. But they also like to be able, not just staff to the upward people, but also the board too. I think we should also open that up to have staff. Are we doing a good job? Are we being respectful? Are we taking into consideration and serious what your growth pattern is?
Yeah, I would be interested in that too, because I know, if I'm doing something wrong or things are being perceived a certain way, I would want to know about it so I can address it. So I want us to be part of that too, for sure.
And I know specific experiences in the past where elected officials have treated staff in ways that were completely inappropriate. And there was no mechanism really for them to run that back somewhere for consequences. Like there just wasn't.
And when we,
Those people aren't here anymore, so
Wait.
just to clarify.
and some of the top positions in recent, last 5 years have been retirements. We've had a couple that just retired. Some took other opportunities for other jobs. So, not everybody that's left was unhappy or dissatisfied with their position. But we do an exit interview on their last day. So and people are pretty open and honest in those exit, but we send that to the supervisor, the department head, and myself, I'll get it. So they can see, ways they can maybe improve moving forward. But other municipalities have done surveys similar to this. And something I think we could do.
No, I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel here, right? Like this is just like a generic kind of like organizational survey that, some third party group that does these things pulls it off the shelf and it's just like, asks all the questions. We might have to tweak it in a little way, because we're a government and we want to ask questions about the electeds as well. Do you like your supervisor? Do you like people you work with? What are your facilities like that you work in? Your office space nice, all that stuff would be helpful. So,
And maybe that isn't necessarily an annual thing. Maybe it's every
2 years.
3 years thing. I'm not interested in checking a box of we did a survey and we paid for this and that, but we didn't change anything or create any avenues for them. So I just would want to be careful of that we're not just being good job, we made a thing for them and it doesn't have any actual impact. So exploring some of those options would be helpful to see what the end results of whatever, top few offerings of those are. And pricing too. I mean, that's gonna be a part of it, but.
Well, I think like we'd like, when the O and M building came to us, right, like we all supported it. But that was something that, you know, I didn't hear really anything about that when Alex was here, and then, you know, Brandon comes here and it's gotten escalated and we're addressing it, and I feel bad that like we let it get to, you know, the condition that it's in now, and I'm glad that we're doing something about it, but that's the sort of thing that I would hope that like a survey like this would help to answer, you know, like and catch, like all of a sudden we're hearing from like one department where they're saying like, you know, the heat doesn't work in our building, it's freezing, like we like, wait a second,
I had
like,
to bring in a bunch of space heaters because.
yeah, like why is that only, why are we only hearing about it now?
Yeah.
So,
You know, Jim, to your comment about, some comments from from previous boards directed towards staff, how I have seen that addressed in other organizations where elected officials were sort of taking it out on staff. It's usually a conversation between the city manager and the mayor with that elected official to say, you know, we need to keep this professional and above board, and I get that you might be frustrated or whatever, but no offense, Matt, take it out on the town manager,
Yeah.
the city manager,
Yeah.
not the
The-
frontline staff
yeah, or
or the department
volunteers.
director, right,
Yeah.
because that's not appropriate. So if that were to happen in the future, then I would say, I think it'd be totally appropriate for the town manager and the mayor to have that conversation with whoever that elected official is. Again, that's how I've seen it work in other
That's
organizations.
helpful. What are and again, that's not for this board, but I've heard from past members, what are the consequences past that conversation? Like if you have the conversation and then a council or board member continues to be inappropriate or hostile, like what happens?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, as elected officials, we're accountable to the electorate. So there's really nothing from a personnel standpoint. However, some activities that I have seen happen is that the mayor will sort of make that executive call and like, you are to no longer email this person, and then they work with the city administration to basically block email coming from that elected official to those employees. That, I think that's an extreme example, but I've seen it come to that.
I mean, it's happening.
Because at that point, it's bordering on harassment.
Yeah, and that's happened at the state level recently with one of the elected who was abusing their staff, and sort of having them do things that were unrelated to the job, you know, so that, you know, Senate leadership stepped in to sort of strip them. But yeah, you probably know what I'm talking about. This stuff does happen. And it's the biggest challenge between being elected by people and then, you know, staff is here. Sometimes the staff is there before, and we sort of assume that the people getting elected are not idiots, but you know, some of them are.
Broomfield just censured
Oh, yeah.
one of the city council members for, like one of them just like went off on staff, and like, so they censured him for exactly what you're talking about. So I mean, it's not,
Mean exactly in terms of consequences, like. For that person to be censured, like,
Yeah.
just means you've been reprimanded publicly.
okay.
It's, but I mean, there's, you know, I think our town code, and I don't know what the charter says, but there's, you know, I mean, there are limited grounds by design, but you could, in theory, remove somebody if they're like
Well, yeah.
in like dereliction of duties and doing something, but that's pretty hard and pretty severe.
I mean, to my knowledge, I don't think anybody in previous boards has been abusive to staff, but I might be wrong. Yeah, I think there's differences of opinion in terms of how organizations can be run. That sometimes the nature of the dais makes it difficult. That's Matt's job to kind of play that layer. You know, just speaking for myself, post-fire, during the fire, I think I was mad at everybody.
Everybody was mad at everybody. Yeah.
Well, I think the idea of third-party survey
Yeah.
is a good one. So I'd say like, let's get some costs from some firms that do this sort of thing and. I think I'm directionally in support, provided that it's not like. A gazillion dollars,
Savings we just made.
right?
And I think to the point of, whether it's every other year, every 3 years, it kind of doesn't matter. We just need a starting point now.
Yeah.
Future boards can decide on the cadence. But, because we've been, even a community health survey we hadn't done for so long. Erie's been doing it every 2 years. And they can continue to evolve. We did ours, we got all sorts of great information. I think the same thing would be true with staff.
And then just going back to the point that was made about elected officials directing probably inappropriate comments. I also think that that's our collective responsibility to dial that back and say, hey, so-and-so, I think we're crossing a line here and, it's fine to disagree, but let's keep the comments at a professional, respectable level and hopefully some of that peer pressure can change behavior, but in extreme cases, then usually, like I said, I've seen the mayor step in and have to sort of deal with it. Not that I'm volunteering you to do that. I'm just-
No, but I also think it's also plug for Matt, right? I mean, that's why, for the 6.5 years I've been on the board, every communication I've ever had with staff, he's always copied like every single piece. So he always knows what's going on and that none of his staff gets directed by one of us to do something that he's not aware of, right?
Yeah, so let's segue to E, which is discussion of council staff communications.
Yeah, I had a request from some council members to add this on there. So let them kind of jump off. I will say, though, that my concern when I first saw this request was talking specifically about a individual employee or personnel matter. We can't do that in public, so we need to keep this discussion more general in nature and not about any specific situation. So that's my ask, as we have this discussion. What's the? Jason, you sent the initial email.
Yeah, I just think we need to streamline a chain of command when we deal with the constituents in the town when they have difficulties come up. And I think we should handle it like most organizations, whereas if we're a board and communication goes through Matt. For example, if we have director of shenanigans because we want to talk about departments and the constituent has an issue with something, that would come to us, we would come to you and you would go to the director of shenanigans and it would come back and we'd be able to repeat the process this way. It's more of a circuitous route to get information available to people, but you being the town manager, you're essentially the CEO of this corporation. So you're the person who has to manage staff. We don't manage staff, you do. So I really would like to see that if we could make a more concerted effort to direct comments directly to you to go to the department head rather than we go to a CCU or make direct inroads, just would create a better buffer. And I think it makes staff feel a lot more safer, the fact that you're their boss, not us. And you could relay the information that way. And it's really no different than any way a Fortune 500 company would handle information.
It ties into what Neil mentioned about CCing me on emails, just so I can make sure the council is getting what they need, whether it's information or assistance with something, or, if you have questions or we're responding to you, or if there's an issue out in the community, then I'm aware of it. I can talk to the department head about it and we can work together and help council members get the information they need to help message it out as well. So I think that's what I always strive to have happen as far as CCing on emails and just so making sure you guys are getting what you need.
Yeah, I just look at it like it strengthens your position as the key person to go through. Rather than we go to the director with a CC to you. I think it would just be a safer alternative to you're the point man on this. Because that's essentially what you are. You are the boss of staff. And if we go, like I said, director, whatever it is, Matt, could you please get an answer on this to me and then you.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that too, but I'm
Yeah.
also okay with council members talking to department heads. Usually I like to keep it at the department head level because, you know, they're, but council members reaching out to them to ask questions or if you run into them and you have something, I've always been fine with that. Cause I feel like my staff knows that if there's a question about something that came out, they'll come to me and we talk about it and decide what's the best approach to handle the question or issue or whatever it might be, so.
Yeah, but that process didn't work this last time and we're not getting into specifics. There has to be a means in which the staff feels as though they're being taken seriously, they're being, advocated for, and I think that necessary step has to be us to use them.
I would just like to ask, in between council member communications, this last, like, it's not over, but with Sagamore, I was really disappointed to find out that there had been communication going on for a very long time before it came to everyone else. And by the time it came to other people, residents were super angry. And when I started to unravel things and see how far back conversations had been going on, I would just like to ask, if you're dealing with something, I know that we're all elected individually, just to the last point of if we behave badly, that's on us and there's not a lot of accountability. But if there's something going on in the community and you're involved with connecting with people and you have any idea or thought that it may become a thing where residents are now asking the board or the council or asking other residents, like there's no definition for this because it's nuanced, but if you're working on something and just please consider it occurring to you to let other people know that this is a thing before it lands on the laps of other people and blindsides them. Because I was in a situation at the school with parents and I had no idea what was going on because I wasn't involved in the conversations that had been going on for weeks. And part of that on me, because I didn't know it was happening, but I've thought about it. I'm like, well, how could I have known that it was happening? No one told me until a resident told me. And that was really frustrating. And I don't want to be in that position again. And I don't think it needed to look that way. And my ask is just, if you're working on something, just tip off the rest of us that this is a thing or that something could be going on, or there's a lot of things we all work on that never need to get communicated to all of us, but there are some things. And if you see it trending in that direction, just let everyone know. Because that is still not going well for the communication piece of the community there. That's all.
I'll offer my thoughts on kind of how we ended up where we did, because it's a little bit of both, right? So staff, a community member comes to me, I go to staff is Matt plus staff member. Hey, can you answer what the heck is going on here? At the same time, that community member keeps on looking for answers. And I still have not gotten an answer from staff. I'm not sending that to the rest of the board saying I'm waiting for this because I'm still waiting for the answer. Staff member may call me with an answer. I don't know how to take that audio conversation and turn it into an email to update the board. And that's some of the problem we've had right now, is that there's so many different ways of communicating. I'm getting texts from some staff members. I don't know what to do with that. And then I'm not able to share that, or because the community member has shared something with me, but then didn't say you could explicitly share this with the rest of the board. Like there's pictures, I had to wait for like 3 days open to share it with everybody. So I'm not sure the right way to do this. And what happened was not intentional. It was more of Matt and staff, please tell us what happened, give us the communication and communicate back to the residents. And even that communication back to the residents, we didn't get copied on it. I got it back from them because they sent it on to us. So I didn't even know what had gone out. None of us knew what had gone out other than the pieces that we saw disparately. And if you take this one situation and you exclude it, I think historically we've done pretty good where, you know, a staff member will email, I'm sorry, a resident will email the board member will go to Matt and staff. And Matt's usually done a really good job of, you know, things that he thinks we all need to know. He'll be the one that sends out. Because again, and the other piece of this is I go back to when I got on board, Kendra yelled and screamed at us about creating a meeting on email. Like, so for 5 years, I do not copy anybody else on the board because I'm going to create a meeting. Nick's a little less emphatic about that. But Kendra, I mean, this was,
He's been mad lately.
yeah, I know. And a lot of this comes back from Kendra. I mean, she's like, do not create a meeting on email.
Yeah.
This is a meeting. This is publicly noticed, but email is a meeting. And if we have more than 2 board members on it, all of a sudden we created a meeting and everything goes sideways.
Maybe
I
I'm not,
relied on Matt to kind of manage that.
I don't think I'm understanding that the same way, because when I want to say, hey, guys, heads up, this is going on, and I email all of you,
You're
as
probably.
long as
You
you don't
vote on it.
reply, you're
Yeah.
not like making a
Nope.
meeting. Well, what if I blind copy all of you on it?
That's probably okay.
Because then
Probably
you
the
can't
attorney
reply.
would say the
only-
safest way is you email
Email
each
private
one
people.
individually.
Well, I've been doing it.
Right.
And I understand that, and I think you're right about excluding this. This has not been an issue. But I feel like this was a big one and we lost somebody over this. And maybe there's other circumstances, but that's how it feels. And I think that's how it's gonna look to the community. And I just don't want that to happen again. And so I just did like a recheck in to be considerate of. I mean, in that case, even it could have been, hey, there's something going on at Sagamore, just a heads up, I don't have answers yet, but. Just know that. If you're walking in Safeway and someone asks, you know, we're working on it. But they were beyond pissed by the time I heard anything, and kind of. Not ideal, and it also felt a little like. There was quietness about it and protecting somebody who doesn't want to be talked about because of their position, which is not how we should be doing business. Like, that's not transparent. It's not for the public. It's for one resident. So it doesn't look good on any of us, and I don't want to be a part of that. That's because it's going to make it affects all of us, even if we're not subscribing to that model of how things look. So.
Well, it also lacks credibility. I mean, that's the one thing I don't, my thing with the board council, you know, we should never be seen as being scandal or, you know, being in some sort of, you know, situation where we're not looked as doing the right thing. And through the messaging with that, we would respond over and over with the same thing, and it was not believed. It was, no, you're wrong, there's a conspiracy theory, or when this person resigned, oh, there must be another reason for that. It's like, the messaging has to be handled correctly the first time, the right way. And that person's, what that staff member comes back with, this is why we did this, it needs to be backed up by us. As long as we understand what they're doing the right way and they've done things for the code or whatever the reason being, that person deserves our support, because essentially they're doing the job that we have Matt hire them for. And if we don't, you know, why are we here for that? You know, we need to have, excuse me, I'm yelling over. Saw's cutting all day today, so my voice is kind of off, but we need staff has to understand we have their back. And then we support what they do in their job, and we appreciate what they do, and we realize that it's a difficult job not a lot of us can do. And I just think that message for them is gonna be something that they are really gonna take to heart if we can get that across.
I mean, I think I think we're all on the same team here. We're all working towards the same goals, right? Like, we're representing the residents. We're trying to provide like the best services as a town, and like collectively, like we're all volunteers. We're all trying to do our best, and you know, we don't always have the same information. Things are fluid. Sometimes you get clear answers to certain things. Sometimes that leads to more questions. You don't know how people are going to respond to emails. You don't know what else is going on in the background, and you know, it's really hard to, you know, I think we all try our best, but it's kind of really hard to necessarily put in like some very systematized way of doing this, because at the end of the day, if I get an email and you don't, and then Matt gets an email and somebody calls and then something else happens, like it's too much chaos. To try to kind of come up with like some sort of like regimented structure where like, and like, I certainly don't want to just like funnel every single email to you and blow up your inbox and be like, here, Matt, you handle all of this. I think what we do typically, like, reaching out to a department head, CCU, so you know that it's happening. So, it's not like I'm reaching out to Leslie and saying, hey, notwithstanding everything that was talked about today, we're doing holiday lights everywhere in Rock Creek, screw the council. Copying you so you know what's going on. I think that typically works, really well. I think, this particular situation, we had residents who weren't satisfied with the answers that they were getting, and they had additional questions, and some were less satisfied than others. And I think that some of those questions are legitimate. And while I 100% believe in like having each and every one of our backs and having staff's back, I also believe in like taking accountability for mistakes, and we're not infallible. And when we make mistakes, like, we need to own it, because sometimes we will make mistakes. And what we don't want to do is like gaslight residents who are pissed off and then say there is no mistake, and then just hide behind kind of like obtuse statements, right? Like, we need to own when mistakes are made and be honest with people about how we're going to deal with those problems. And also like when we can't deal with those problems, and when they're going to have to like suck it up and live with the consequences of those mistakes. So like, that's very difficult, but like, that to me is what you need to do when you have like the crisis, when you have a real problem, is like actually own it, not obfuscate, and just be honest with people and tell them what you can do versus what you can't do. And then, at the end of the day, like, those folks might not be happy with the answers, but at least you're leveling with them and being honest.
And to build off of that, Mark, I agree with that. And I also think it's completely appropriate to say, you know what? I don't have all the information right now. Give me a few days to look into it and we can get back to you. Because I have a sense that we want to serve, we want to get, as close to real-time information out to the person that's asking the question as possible. And in some cases, that's absolutely the right thing to do, because maybe the information's at our fingertips. In other cases, we might have to do a little bit of digging just to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, so we can get the right information. And then whether or not the constituent believes the information is a whole other thing, but just recognizing that, hey, give me a little bit of time to make sure I get this right.
But there also has to be some understanding as council members that when residents repeated questions over and over again become harassment towards that staff member. And there has to be a point in time where we tell that person, no, this is the answer, period. That's it. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you, because that's the truth as we've been told by staff. And that's how we're going to present it to you. There has to be that level of manning up a little bit, growing a parent, just not being afraid of the residents. I mean, yeah, maybe it's a political thing we're in. Maybe people have their minds somewhere else down the road, but we have to be honest and say, look, no, this is it. These are the answers. You don't like it, or it's not flat. Sorry. It's like, these are the things we need to be more, willing to say, look, come on, we've gone over this again and again and again, and it's the same thing. Nothing's changed. Move on. Anything else we can help you with, great. But I don't want to keep flogging a dead horse because somebody's upset because they refuse to accept what we're giving them, because what we're giving them is what the staff is telling us is the truth.
Well, for me, I feel like it all comes down to how we approach the interactions with staff and residents. So when issues arise, and of course, emotions are high, it's always best, at least in my experience, and I certainly don't know everything, but to approach things with curiosity. So when somebody comes to us and has an issue, we might not always have the answers right away, and it might take staff a while to get us the answers, but just set expectations of, I didn't know about this, and let me learn more about it, and approaching staff with that same kind of curious, open mind of, I heard this happened, please help educate me on, what was the process? How is this looked at, bringing that into those conversations and communications as well, so he knows what's going on. I like your idea of letting us all just have a heads up, like, hey, this looks like something that could snowball. Don't have all the information, but like, just get this on your radar, this is a thing, because I was equally, shocked when it all came to light, but, for me, it just, how we approach our residents and staff should be with a curiosity and trying to get to the bottom of it. And, when we do get to the bottom of it and we know what the answers are, communicating that. And, sometimes that's not the answer that everybody wants to hear, but it's the answer. And, maybe there's some nuances or additional information that they say, well, you're saying this and I get that, but what about this? Like, that's a good point. Let me learn more about that. But, to me, it all comes back to having a curious approach instead of, one that you're prejudging anything. I don't know if that's helpful, but-
All right.
I appreciate this conversation because I feel like one of the newbies on right now, like today, for instance, very different kind of level of conversation, but we got 19 emails on the same subject. And so much of me just wants to say, thank you so much for, your inquiry. Is that something you're all doing? I asked Matt this question. I'm like, can I just ask everyone what we do with these emails? Because I feel like there might be, if you're answering one, you're answering one, you're answering one. I can't answer everyone, or I can't answer all of us on that same one. I just want to make sure the residents know, almost like you do on the dais, Matt, Mark, is thank you for your, for your time, or thank you for your comments. That's what, I don't know. I just wanted to make sure.
When
Is
I
that
met,
always
when
the
I
question?
met with like each and every one of you, like one-on-one, like the very beginning when everybody was elected, like, I talked about how like one of the goals that I had of like, this council was like to try to be responsive to like each and every person. Like, they don't need to hear from all of us, but they should hear from at least one of us.
Mhm.
And like, how do we do that effectively? Like, sometimes we do it well, and Stephanie will take on like responding to one kind of group of emails and CC the board, and and that's great, even though it probably she's pretty violations. But I'll look past that. So like, I don't know what the answer
Okay.
is to like,
Okay.
there's certainly no harm in
say thank
you yourself responding, not copying the full
Okay.
council. And just saying like, thanks for your email, like, got it, like just an acknowledgement.
Okay.
What Pandora's box that opens up in terms of like whether people want to hear that when they actually want to hear like,
Mhm.
something substantive, like depends on who
Yeah.
you're reaching out to. So I don't know what the answer is and like what the best practice is. Like, I wish we didn't have that like open meetings like thing, and like we had like a way where like, you can kind of thread it in like some
Yeah.
sort of,
Hey, I'm
like
up
a
at
like
2
a
and
Slack,
Mike's got
like so
10
like
and I'm gonna
everybody,
take
so
care of
everybody
it
would
forever.
know, like, okay, like, all right, Heather took care of these.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad somebody, because like, I don't want to leave people hanging,
Okay.
but I still to this day, like, don't know what the proper approach is without like violating the open meetings laws, and maybe the consequences, like, screw it, just violate the open meetings laws and CC the council and just say like, thanks.
I mean, is it violated if I respond and I CC council, which I only do, so it's like, hey, everybody, this is what I
Yeah.
said, so we're all on the same page and everybody knows that I responded and what I said, and if people don't respond to my email, but they have something where they're like, oh, she was wrong on that, can they respond to you? Well, they could respond to me and tell me that I got it wrong.
The lawyers will tell you that it's an open meetings
Yeah.
violation.
Because if you did reply all, and then they reply all.
But what if they reply to the resident and CC council so they can see, well, I replied and this is what I said, but they don't reply to mine?
Yeah, the lawyers will still say that that's an open meetings law violation, which is just stupid and frustrating, but it is what it is. Which is why this is like stupidly, unreasonably challenging when it shouldn't be, like,
I reply, if I'm gonna reply to something that's complicated,
Mhm.
I usually copy the cat so that we're not sending
Right.
multiple
Contradictory.
messaging that are potentially
yeah,
the
yeah.
opposite of each other. But if I'm just saying, like with some of the airports today, I said, thanks, we're, because some of them were asking specifically like, why didn't you talk about this yet? I'm like, because we haven't talked about it yet. And as soon as we
Yeah.
do, then there will be an update, so I replied to some individually and just said, thanks for, so it's totally okay to do that. And if they get 7 individual
yeah.
replies, they'll be like, great, they're replying. So don't ever feel like you can't do that. But if it's something that, so no one else has to reply, it's usually not necessarily a positive email when I'm replying at that level. So just to let other people know that like I've said this stuff, so nobody else has to reply if you don't want to. Because some of them are just not kind, so.
I mean, I try to respond to as many as I can, because I remember when I was on the other side of the room
Okay.
and I'd send an email and it'd just be crickets, right? Like, did they get it? Did I have the wrong email address? Like, so hearing from any of us or more than one of us is usually like, great, okay, they understand what I'm talking about, to get it. And even if we send the same acknowledgement emails, I think it carries a lot of weight that, yeah, we are actually reading these things. But like you said, if they get complicated, I'll probably give them my response. And what's awkward is because, in some communities, they have wards or districts, so you're talking and your representative is probably gonna be the one that responds, but we represent everybody.
Right.
So if they hear 5 different points of view in 4 different emails, then they can see the challenge we're gonna have to make a decision. I think it's okay, but I think I always try to, when time allows, and that's the challenge, I try to respond to as
Thank you.
That's for one more thing, in talking with staff. We're elected officials, right? And we get dartboards on us and we get people abusing us, saying all sorts of things, and that's part of the job, right? I mean, there's no complaining about that. But I would like to think that. Oh, you don't?
I said not Heather.
Oh, no, yeah, not.
Well, I've gotten a few, don't worry.
Time will come.
When people become abusive to staff, I would expect, and I really hope every person in this room would stand up to that person. And
Yeah.
I got myself in a shitload of trouble a year and a half ago when somebody went for Matt's job on Facebook, and this individual has been hunting me since. Every single thing online in an RMMA page, he's been after me. And I stood up for Matt. And I would expect everybody in this room to do the same thing because staff is off limits. You want to yell at us, you want to tell us that we're garbage online, go right ahead. That's fine, we're an elected official, but they should not be going after staff. That's just beyond the belt, in my opinion.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I feel like if anybody's gonna be a punching bag, it should be us.
Yep.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, we are the representatives. And ultimately, we hire Matt, so the buck's gotta stop with us. So,
I'm used to it.
but problem is there's like so many forums and, like, and I don't read it all, right? Like, I don't.
I have
don't
friends
know
send me
what's going on on
screenshots and it's just like.
So, I try to be on as little Facebook as possible. It's just toxic. But
Yeah, to your point, both of your points, when we're made aware of it, I would expect us to stand up.
all right, anything further?
For me, my original schedule I sent out for work sessions had June 2nd, which is the first Monday in June. Wanted to ask if the council was okay with moving that to the third Monday, which is June 16th. I'm gonna be out of town. I just learned on June 2nd, so if that doesn't work, Martin can run the work session on the 2nd. I think he's back in town, so that if it does work, I'd like to move it to the 16th.
I know I will be out of town.
Okay, all right. So maybe we'll just keep the 2nd, because that's what everybody thought.
16th works for me.
either one works for me.
Yeah, I'm good for both.
16th is good.
I didn't want Mike to be here.
We're gonna talk.
No
about it.
meaty targets.
I'll talk with Martin and see. And go from there. We'll send out calendar.
All right,
Thank you.
anything further? All right, we're adjourned. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Should have something from.